Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Rachel Patton, Executive Director of Preserve Arkansas. Preserve Arkansas is the statewide nonprofit advocate for historic preservation. Welcome to Women in Preservation, the series that features women who are working to save historic places. Thank you to our series sponsor, DMX Architecture of Fayetteville, for their generous support of Women in Preservation. Many of you are members of Preserve Arkansas, and we thank you for your support. But if you're not already a member, I'd encourage you to join us. Memberships provide a vital source of revenue for our organization and allow us to continue the important work of saving Arkansas's historic places. Plus, membership comes with new benefits like swag, stickers, and t-shirts, and memberships may be paid monthly, quarterly, or annually. Learn more and join at preservearkansas.org. Go ahead and mark your calendars for the Arkansas Preservation Awards dinner. That'll be at the Robinson Center in Little Rock on Friday, January 30th, 2026. We'll gather with friends from throughout the state and celebrate outstanding achievements in historic preservation from the past year. Stay tuned for ticket and sponsor information. And this is the last Women in Preservation webinar for our 2025 series, but be sure to join us to kick off the 2026 series on February the 10th with Catherine Nash, Technical Services and Easement Coordinator for the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Jackie Wolven. Jackie Wolven is the Executive Director of Main Street Eureka Springs, a historic mountain town in the Ozarks of Arkansas. Her work centers on revitalizing the downtown through a preservation lens, from restoring sidewalks and historic windows to creating programs that strengthen civic trust and community pride. Jackie believes that preservation is as much about people as it is about places, and she works to ensure our heritage remains a living, evolving part of community life. As a Weave speaker and a collaborator with the Foundation for Social Connection, Jackie brings a deep commitment to belonging, creativity, and the power of small towns to chart resilient, hopeful futures. Welcome, Jackie.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I am coming to you from uh, my living room where I am recovering from knee replacement surgery. And so thank you for your patience as I try to do this in a setting that is not how I usually speak, but I'm excited to be here. I can go ahead and share my screen, right, Rachel?
Yes, and I'll tell you whenever just to make sure it looks right.
Great. We
Okay,
are.
it's all set.
Excellent. So, um, as I sit in my recovery recliner, I will share with you some of the work that I am doing with my team in Eureka Springs and sort of share some thoughts I have about preservation. And at the end, I have some people that I think are interesting to follow in the field, and I hope that you will look for them. Um, to learn that preservation is much larger than some of the projects even that I'm going to talk about. So I'm kind of excited to share those. I mean, I can talk about myself all day, but that's kind of boring. So I'm going to also try to talk about some other people. But we will start with me, obviously. I think it's good to get kind of an origin story. I grew up in the 1970s in the suburbs, Southern California. I grew up in Anaheim, and they're cookie cutter houses. So I can't think of anywhere in Arkansas that really has that same vibe, but it is quintessential Southern California. They were all built in the 1950s. They all look the same. In fact, our tract had three kinds, right? So I had a kind, we lived in a kind, my best friend lived in a different kind, and the neighbor was a different kind, right? So not a lot of choice. They all looked pretty much the same. And I remember that. So it's all also very new-ish, right? I didn't grow up with any antiques. So my parents were both from the East Coast, my mom from New Jersey and my dad from the Detroit area. And they came in the 1940s to California in one car, obviously separately. They didn't know each other then, but their families came to California in one car, like so many people did. So anything that they would have had that would have been like an antique or something passed on to them from a family member didn't go with them. They didn't have any of that. So I didn't grow up around antiques. I didn't grow up around preservation really, except my mom was a librarian and she worked for the Anaheim Library Historic Center, which was inside the library. And it was filled with memorabilia about Anaheim. And what is the biggest thing in Anaheim? Disneyland. So a lot of people would come to the library, to her center, to learn about Disneyland. And I had a very interesting relationship with Disneyland too. And this is sort of informs my preservation. So I've got my mom who's like teaching us a little bit about the Anaheim history, right? Like sort of the beginnings of Anaheim and how that existed and who those people were. And then my brother, who was 12 years older than I was, worked at Disneyland when I was a kid. And I used to go to Disneyland almost every weekend on his employee pass with a friend. And so I spent most of my time on Main Street, but Main Street Disneyland. And I hate to say, but I do think my love of Main Streets really came from that sort of fictitious place. Um, and so that's sort of the origin. And yeah, that really is me. That's me as a brownie. Didn't last as a brownie because the troop's daughter was not great. So, but I loved the outfit. So there you go. Um, so I transitioned and when I got this job, I've been in this job for 17 years, going on my 18th year. And preservation, I loved the lens of preservation because economic development through a lens of preservation means that you can be grounded in a place. And I think that is really important. But I have some beliefs about preservation that maybe you share, or maybe don't, but I thought I would share what they were. I do think it is about belonging to place. I don't like preservation for preservation's sake. I like it for making places feel rooted in the history that they have. Um, I don't ever want to save a building just because we want to save a building. I want to save a building because there's a story behind the building, and that the people who still live in that place have a relationship with the story that then goes with the building. And so it's about belonging to place. And then that transitions right into authentic stories. Part of the work that I do, and I'll share later, is about sharing authentic stories. I think that history gets a bad rap for kids, I think, because it's, old. I have an 8-year-old grandson, and I think when I listen, I sort of think, oh, they think that's just stuff that happened in the past, right? And I think it's because a lot of times it feels kind of dry, but I love narrative. I love story. I love the way that you can bring a historical moment to life. I think that there's real value in that. And so I think the stories are almost more important than the places, but the places root the story. And then I love adaptive reuse. I love nothing more than adaptive reuse. I love the fact that our old high school is now our community center and business center. I love to see old fire stations become cafes. I just think there's such value in reusing places so that they have a use today instead of forcing them into what they used to be. So I think it's fun. We have a church now that has become it's part of the library system. And I think that's really exciting because that's a very different reuse option. And I just think the creative thinking about reusing places, also that you can, it's greener, it's better for the environment. There's so much to that, but it also just has so much more real flavor. A building that's preserved and it's used today, even in a different way, just has a richness to it that a new build will never have. And then the other two things that I really care about is telling the whole truth. So the truth of it is, our history is hard in America. It's really hard. There's a lot of hard stories. In my own community, we have a lot of hard stories, things that are, frankly, somewhat shameful. But I believe in telling those stories. One, because I think by facing truth, you become fuller and richer yourself. And also, if you face it, you don't have shame. So I think it's important that we just like eyes wide open, see the stories and see the history of what has happened and just tell the stories as it is. There's no reason to pretend that things didn't happen. Also, I'd like us to learn and not do those things again. So if we tell the story, maybe we won't repeat the story is my hope really. And then one that's somewhat new to me, and not just because I had knee replacement surgery, but it's like my eyes have started to open to is accessibility. ADA is a tricky thing when you talk to preservationists. When I first started my job, I would say things like, what about ADA? Just in a real quiet voice. And I would get shut down pretty quickly because it feels like an obstacle that's too great for to be jumped over. But I don't think that way anymore. So I believe that all design should have ADA and building for children as our baseline. And yes, we might not always be able to reach that, but that's where we should be starting. Like, what would be the right thing to do? And then, because if we build for ADA and we build for children, it actually is better and more accessible to everybody. And so my thinking has changed and evolved as I've continued in this, in this profession. But those are my five beliefs. That's what I kind of stack when I'm doing preservation work. And this photo here, we did a project through our grant with Main Street, Arkansas, to redo this intersection. For those of you who have been to Eureka Springs, this is Spring and Main. It is a very strange intersection. What they're closing up there used to be stairs that came down and came across Main Street, which is a state highway, like landed right in the street. And so our team paid for the rock work to be done in the traditional manner so that we would close up the stairway and not allow people to cross the street there. They still do sometimes, but we are always hopeful that they will relearn not to do this, because it's not safe. People can't see you when you're crossing there. But this was a great project. The whole community got involved in this project. In fact, it was a community, we do a design thinking process, and this particular intersection came up over and over as the project that they wanted fixed. And so that's what that is. All right. So I'll talk about all the other projects, the preservation projects that we do. Um, I don't think often people actually think of my Main Street as a preservation. I really don't. I think they think of us as community development, but we do a lot of preservation projects. So it was really fun to be able to like pull these up for you. This is a project that we're working on right now. Um, this is the auditorium in downtown. It is next to the courthouse. If you've been downtown, it's a huge building, and this is the basement. And the floor, as you probably can tell in that photo, is not great. It used to be a roller rink. It was a basketball court. It's now where they do their city meetings. It's hosted parties and bands, and it's just a mess. And so we decided to create this program called Preservation Boot Camp, which we've run a couple of things through, and I'll show you another one. But this, we brought in Bob Yap, from Hannibal, Missouri, to come in and teach us the process of redoing this floor in a way that has all of the preservation pieces as part of the process. So there's no sanding that happens. There's no belt sander. In fact, this process is the same process that's done in George Washington's house, because he did that. So we brought like the master. Bob is the master. And so we did a small section of this floor. And now we are running boot camps to teach other people how to do this as we go down the floor. We can only do it section by section because they still have to use the building while we're doing this. So we do a section and then we move the chairs and stuff, and then we do another section. And this is for volunteers can come too. This is a way to give back to the community. They can come and spend 3 days, and they are part of the restoration of this great building in this great space. And so we're really proud of this project, both the education aspect and the fact that we are, saving this historic structure. The auditorium is sort of the life center of our downtown, and it is important that all these pieces get fixed. I will say they didn't ask us to do this project. We came to them and said we would like to do this project. And so sometimes it's that. It's just you seeing something and then deciding, well, how could we do that? If they were to pay to have this, it would be exorbitant. So this is a good way to get this done. It'll take about a year and a half for the whole floor to be finished, but that's okay. That's part of the work too. Everything takes a long time. This is also a preservation boot camp project. This is our second window project. The first window project we did at Wonderoo Lodge, and we brought in Bob Yap for that too. And we did, I think we did 4 windows at Wonderoo. And then this year we did this building, which is our Carnegie Public Library. And these windows were in bad, bad shape. And it's the same process. We originally had brought in Bob. Those students had taken that class with Bob, and then they took that knowledge and they are now running the boot camp with new students. So we're continually teaching people, and then they're teaching people. It's a great process. And we just honestly, we look at a building and we think, maybe they could use some window help. And then we go and approach them and say, do you think you need some window help? And no cost to them. We cover the costs of all of this. And it's, restoring really one window at a time. I wish I had it before because this is really terrible. It is terrible. But yeah, it's great. I will say, at that original window workshop is when I met the man who is now our building inspector. And so he is running our 2 boot camps. We've forged a relationship, and he comes with 33 years of experience in building, and now he's the building inspector. And that, excuse me, that has helped a lot to create that kind of trust. So we have the trust with the city because we're using the building inspector, and the community gets to know the building inspector in a different way. So that's been really good because oftentimes the building inspector can be someone that people are afraid of. And in a learning environment, that all goes away. And so that has been a really positive thing. All right. It is fun for me to talk about projects. I got to tell you, I don't talk about these very often. So this is just great. Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate it. Um, this is a project I'm super proud of. She had to hear me wax on about this yesterday in too many ways, but we realized in Eureka Springs that we did not have enough licensed contractors. And you might be thinking, why doesn't Main Street care about licensed contractors? Well, we care because one, it's economic development. It's also our preservation based has to be with people. We like to work with licensed contractors. And also, we realized that we were seeing a trend that made us particularly uncomfortable. So, our community had, I'm going to call them like handymen or carpenters who were not contractors, and they would just they wouldn't really bid on a project. They would talk to a homeowner or a property owner, and they would get hired at, like, let's say $25, $30 an hour, but they never actually scoped out they don't scope out the project. So you're paying an hourly wage, and that is a danger because I don't know if any of you have done any kind of preservation work or anything, any construction projects at all. If you can't budget it and someone's just charging you, it can be exponentially just balloon out. And this is happening. This is happening in our community. One, people didn't know how to do it. That, these folks don't have degrees necessarily in construction management. They may be really good builders, or carpenters, or whatever that is, but they don't have that management piece of it. And they also probably didn't have insurance and weren't bonded. And so we decided that we would host a 6-week contractor test prep class, which I don't think is done. Like, I haven't seen this. I've looked all over the country to see who's doing this. As you can see, we had a huge mix of people come to this class. We had 33 people come for 6 weeks. And our goal was, if even half of them took the test to become a licensed contractor, that would benefit everybody. That would benefit everybody. And a lot of people in this room are people who are working for other contractors. So sometimes preservation is like floors or windows, but sometimes it's like the nuts and bolts of like, could we possibly train people to become actual contractors? In this process, they got to meet me, which was super fun because, I hire these folks to do projects. So it's great that they get to know me. They got to meet our HDC executives, so that was great. Because sometimes not knowing someone or not having a relationship with them makes that process scary. And by getting to know them, I think we kind of alleviated that. And then the class was run by the building inspector, so they got to know him intimately for 6 weeks. And I think that is going to actually benefit the community in so many ways beyond what we can even think about. And I would highly encourage this, by the way. Like, of projects I've done, this might have been one of the best projects. We intend to run this probably every other year, but I am already gaining a list of people who weren't able to take it this time. So it's possible we might run it next year. The only cost, I should say, that to the folks was the cost of the book. We didn't charge them to take the class. We didn't charge them our time or anything or anything else, just the cost of the book that they need to study to take the test. And then this is a project I'm working on. It's called Young Preservationist, and I am building a program sort of like, okay, so if you are young enough, I am not, by the way, but if you are young enough to remember the Pizza Hut Book It program, um, it, it's sort of like that. Or think of it as like scouts for preservation. So I am working with our middle school civics teacher and Sarah Marsom, who is a young preservationist out of Michigan, who is my consultant on this to build this program. And we are building this program to help our young people invest in their love of downtown Eureka Springs. Every year, I have the opportunity to go speak to the high school about downtown Eureka Springs. And what I hear, um, now I will say, the first time I heard this, I cried like on the stage because I asked the question, do you love downtown? Do you love downtown? Thinking they were going to say yes. That is not what they said. They said, it's not for us, it's for the tourists. It's not our town, it's their town. And I was devastated. Devastated. Can you imagine living in a community your whole life, for them, their whole lives, and they don't think that the place they live is theirs? Um, that's painful, actually. And so, because I that's what I heard. I went back and I worked with my team, and we decided that where we needed to get them was middle school. High school was too late. But if we could get them in middle school to learn to love it and why they should love it, the stories about it, and the architecture and the geology, and, there's so much to it. And, if they could learn to love it then, maybe when I go back to the high school, if they've come through this program, they won't have that answer. And so we will run it in the spring. And so I will report back on how it goes. We're making it so it's replicatable. So this could be done in any community. That's our goal. It's not just for us. I want to make this program so that anyone anywhere could adopt it for their own community. But for us, it really is a heart project. I want the people, the kids who grow up in my community to love our community. And so why not build a program? So young preservationists, that's where we are. We got a National Trust grant to do this project. And so I'm really honored to bring this when this happens. It just feels really lovely, actually. So we shall see. We'll see how they if they're into it. And then every single day, except I think Easter and Christmas, maybe New Year's Eve, we don't do it either. Maybe there's 3 days. We provide an award-winning walking tour. This is actually what funds my organization. Um, we're one of those strange Main Street programs that does not receive city funding. And if you know anything about Eureka Springs politics, that's probably not a bad thing. So we had to forge a way to make our own funding without burning ourselves out. And so we have created a walking tour that generates quite a bit of funds and is really fun and accurate. So there are a lot of tours in Eureka Springs, and bless them, but ours is actually accurate. We have researched everything to make sure that what we're saying is true. And that's important because not everyone feels that way. But we do. As preservationists, we feel like we need to tell the true stories. And so, yeah, we're excited. I have a group of tour guides. They're fantastic. And it is a fun thing to be able to share with the visitors. Eureka Springs unique. We have, anywhere, it depends. We have anywhere from 800,000 to 1 million visitors. It depends on who you ask, who come through town a year. And so it's nice to be able to offer something to them and to showcase everything that we love about Eureka Springs. Right now, we are working on a true crime version of this, and the research is gruesome and amazing. And that will launch next year at spring break. And we're super excited about that too. It's not ghosts, it's actual true crime, which sets us a little apart. And for those who want to know, we always recommend the Crescent, although they're not in our downtown district. That's who we recommend for a ghost tour if that's your interest. But so for us, it's history and then it'll be true crime. So we're excited about that. And then I wanted to take a second to think in this, like for you to think about your place, not just, you know, not just my place, but your place. And I think it's important to, when we're thinking about this work, you can see maybe how this works for us is that, like, going to the high school and realizing that these kids don't really feel welcomed. Um, so I wanted you to just take a second and think about like a place in your community that you feel particularly welcomed in. And I think it's important that we do this regularly, that we think about the places that we gravitate towards, right? That resonate for us. And I think it's important that we lift those places up. Um, I shared at the very beginning that adaptive reuse is one of my favorite things in the whole world. And it's because there's life in buildings, right? That's what we want. We want life in these buildings, in these places. The built environment isn't meant to be like a museum. It's meant to be used. And so just for yourself, take a second and think about where do you feel most comfortable? Where do you feel most welcome? I just think it's nice to think about that. For myself, downtown, I didn't put a picture here, but I sure could have. My husband and I got married 5 years ago. We've been together 35 years, but 5 years ago we got married, and we got married on the courthouse steps. And it was almost as if I was not only marrying my husband, but I was marrying my town because I love my courthouse so much. And I love everything it stands for, and I love that it has two staircases that go up, and it's so emblematic of what I feel like a civic space should look like and be, and it's vibrant and it's used, and I just really, yeah, I really love it. So it's one of my places. And then I wanted to share some people, and I put their website, um, take a screenshot. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of these folks because I think the work that they're doing is tremendous. The first person is Sarah Marsum. Now, that's the consultant that I'm working with on the Young Preservationist. She is using craft to highlight preservation, and she's won the National Trust like I don't know, like preservation star of the year or something. I don't know. I don't like, she's a big deal. And she's in her 30s, and she's probably one of the most exciting people in preservation that I know. And her love and of it is deep and wide. Um, she has single-handedly uh, made organizations show salaries like when they put jobs on online. She has forced them because salary uh, transparency is really important across the industry, and she just is an advocate for the preservationist and for the preservation um, field. And I think that she is one to watch, maybe forever. She's really just amazing. Um, and then there's Dr. Joy Baker. And I don't know if you know about the Descendants Project, but she's in the Eighth Ward of Louisiana, and she is healing and flourishing the Black descendant community in Louisiana. So it's particularly about slaves and owning that land and that story and those places. And I think that her work is so rich and that we can learn so much from it. Louisiana is not that far from us. And so I feel like those stories are our stories too. And the way, if you look at the descendantsproject.org, it just helps you see a fuller picture. And I think her work is really important. Then on a totally different is Leticia Gomez Franco, who's the director of the Balboa Art Conservation Center, which is not about preserving buildings, but is about art conservation. So also preservation, but in a different lens, right? And she might be one of the most interesting art preservationists that I know of for sure. One story I know about her is they had some Muslim art in the museum, and the preservation model or way of doing it included using pork products. Some art supplies are derived from different kinds of animal products. You may not know that, but they are. And but Muslims don't eat pork. And so she worked with a group to find an alternative to do this preservation work on that particular artwork. That kind of sensitivity to preservation is exciting to me because it is granular. You're really drilling down about what's important. And I respect that so much. And then lastly, Tracy Nguyen Mang is the founder of the Vietnamese Boat People. And you might be thinking, yeah, so maybe you remember the boat people. Like I remember the boat people. I live next to Little Saigon. So Anaheim was right next to Little Saigon. And you might be thinking, what does this have to do with Arkansas? Well, come to find out, there's a whole group of Vietnamese boat people who came and live in Fort Smith. I was recently interviewed by a student at U of A, and his last name was Tran. And I said, hey, are you Vietnamese? Which, you don't always ask people that, but I felt like I could ask him. He's like, I am. And then I said, are there Vietnamese people in Arkansas? I said, are you from Arkansas? Because I thought maybe he'd be from Houston. And he was like, no, I'm from Fort Smith. There's a huge group here. Anyway, that led me down the rabbit hole to find out about more about that. And Tracy Myung Ming is doing this collective storytelling to tell the stories about the people who were the original boat people. So it'd be like maybe his grandmother, the student who interviewed me, and maybe his grandmother or grandfather would be the people that he would be interviewing as part of this project. Anyway, I'm so excited about it because it's like all that connection and cultural connection and then preserving those stories is exciting. And then to know that Arkansas was part of this project just was really delightful. She is really pushing the envelope on how you help people tell their particular story. And I think that's exciting. I think that's great. Anyway, that's really all I had. I see preservation as a place to help people feel part of a place. And, I didn't grow up in that. I grew up in where everything was new. And if it was depicting something that was like preserved, it was like not real. And I don't want that. I want real. And I think that's the work that we're doing is to keep things real. And I really appreciate Rachel and the work that they're doing because it's hard. This isn't easy stuff. It's hard sometimes to convince people to do it. It's hard to help people see the value of it. It's hard to see where they belong in it. Some people may not feel like preservation is a place for them. And part of our work as preservation is to help them understand and connect to it so that they also feel part of it. So I appreciate this. And I hope that's helpful. And if you have questions, I think you can ask me questions.
Thank you, Jackie. Yes,
Yeah.
you've got some questions already, and y'all have plenty of time to add more if you want to. But I'll start with from Malin Rice. Can you tell us about what your budget is in dollars?
What do you mean? Do you mean like my organization budget or like in a
Yes,
project?
I'm
Okay, so
thinking he needs, yeah,
my
yes.
organization is tiny, so I am part-time, and my budget is $110,000 a year. It is very small. Uh, but you don't need a lot of money to do a lot of projects. As you can see, we do a lot of projects without a lot of money. Granted, I write grants for things, so there could be extra funding on something, but our like base is $110,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then he says, and how do you engage your community in all these wonderful projects to be a financial member? So do you have memberships? And
No, so we can't have memberships. So we're a 501(c)(3), which doesn't allow for memberships. We don't have that. So you have to be a 501(c)(6) to have a membership, in the IRS world. So we have not been great at this. I'm just not gonna lie. This is not our forte. But we are launching on Giving Tuesday a thing called the Eureka 100 to allow people to be reoccurring donors. So every month they can donate $5, $10, $20, and that will help us at least keep the lights on without me having to raise that kind of money, right? Um, and mostly the funding I get is outside the community, not going to lie. Like it is. It's out, like when I do grant writing or I'm asking for foundations, it's outside the community. Locally, um, it's harder. It's harder. I'm not going to lie, but we get volunteers, and volunteer time is valuable. So all the volunteers who do those windows, all the volunteers who do the teaching, all the volunteers who do the floors, we had, yeah, that to me, like there's value in that because it like sweat equity actually might be more valuable sometimes than dollar equity. Because if you spend time doing something, you might care about it a little bit more. Do I want more money? Yes, I'm not gonna lie.
Yes, you can become one of the Eureka 100 on Giving
You
Tuesday.
can, that's right. That is right.
Let's see. I was going to ask you about the tour guides that
Mm.
are people volunteers? Like, how do you
Oh,
keep
no,
that
no.
going every
They're
day?
paid. They're
Okay,
paid
good.
well. So they're paid. That's a paid position. They're paid. And then they get tips on top of the pay. But right. So I have three tour guides running tours every day, year round. You have to pay them. That's not a volunteer
Yeah.
job. And it's also our income. So it's important to pay them because we are relying on them to make our income. That's not right for a volunteer to do either. So, yeah, we have high expectations of that skill being able to do that because it's part entertainer, part crowd control.
Mhm. Yes. Okay, let's see. Does anybody else have? Oh, Steve Wren. Am I correct? The Vietnamese boat people moved to that area because they could continue fishing in a similar way that they did in Vietnam. Jackie, I don't know if you want to.
I don't know. I don't know, and I want to know more. This all has made me more interested in it, right? Like, yes, that could be. But also there was resettlement. Like it could have been more of a government program was resettling people. So I know in my own community in Orange County, it was a government resettling. In Houston, it was a government resettling. And it might have also been in Fort Smith that it was a government resettling, you
It
know?
was. Yeah, they moved him to Fort Chaffee. Yeah, and Malin is
Okay.
still.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that may have been just a good thing that came out of where they were put. But yeah,
Houston too, because fishing, right? Houston had that as well. Orange County, not so much, honestly.
but yes, there's really good Vietnamese restaurants you should go.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. That's
Yeah.
what the student was telling me at the U of A. He's like, yeah, and like nail salons, and like he was just like all the things. He's like, it's a Vietnamese community because there's the food, there's nail salons. He was like, they're everywhere. I'm like, I've been to Fort Smith so many times, like haven't and like not seen it. And I think that's interesting too, like how you kind of have blinders on. It has now made me want to go back and see, well, how are we highlighting that? How are they integrating into the community? I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm. No,
Mhm.
that's very interesting. And now I'm thinking about your building inspector. I'm like, who is this person? Like, why do we
Mhm.
not all cities have a building inspector who's willing to do this kind of
Maybe
stuff? It's really.
maybe they would be. So we he's lovely. His name's Paul Sutherland, and we lucked out, honestly, but also we forged the relationship. Like, hey, we're having this window workshop. Would you like to take it? We're bringing in this like stellar guy. Like, we offered, like, do you think this is something you might want to do? Right? With no expectations at that point. But it's like, how do you get to know someone? I feel like so much of the work, preservation work, Main Street work, all of the work is like, how do you invite people in a way that they can feel connected to the work that you're doing, right? And so this was like an obvious, like we're doing like a building thing. Do you want to come? you know? So he
Mhm.
came and he was very intrigued by the project and how we were handling it, and then kept bugging me. Honestly, can we do more? What more could we do? What else could we do? Right? And it's like all it took was that first introduction of like, we're open to this. That was the other thing. We remain, because we're small, because we have small budgets and we're a small team, we can remain pretty flexible. So he came to me with the library windows. He sits on the library board. He's like, would you want to do the library windows? And I was like, oh, sure. Like being able to say yes to someone is also a way to bring them in. right? Because it's really no skin off us to be able to say, yes, we'll do a project, except it's like my time to market it or my time to, or some supplies, but it's fine. I just feel like part of what I see is that people get really locked into a work plan and they stick to that work plan and they don't allow any kind of fluidity or flexibility. And we allow a little flexibility because we realize, like, if he'd asked and we said, well, maybe next year, he'll lose interest, right? You have to be a little faster. You have to say, oh, sure, okay, when this year can you do that? And he, then we came up with the dates and times. But that was it. And I agree. I think every Main Street and every preservation group should be forging relationships with that building inspector because they have like such a deep knowledge that, and also we need our builders not to be afraid of them or our property owners. Like we need to like demystify this person. Like I think we've made them out to be like the villain in many cases. And it's like, maybe that's not the way you actually get things done. Maybe the way you get things done is people get to know each other and they build a relationship. And when they have a question or they have a problem or they're working on something and they can't quite figure it out, they have a trusted source who they can actually ask questions with, too. And that's how it's working here. And he's pretty good about not just finding someone, but saying, maybe if you do this, this, and this, you know what I mean? I'm not going to say there's not problems. There are people who do not do the right thing. I'm not going to lie. There are people who do not do the right thing. And he has to like tell them you are not doing the right thing. But for people who are trying to work out the process of preservation, he's more than willing to help them, figure that out with them. And I think it's because he's invested in the relationships and we're trying to help that too. We're very pro building inspector. We say that everywhere we go. Yeah, it's a good guy. You should get to know him.
No, that's great. That's great
Yeah.
advice. We're gonna
Yeah.
have to try that out here and
Yes.
in
Yeah.
other places. Yeah.
Get to
Um,
know them. Yeah.
yeah, it's important. It's a great idea. And the fact that he has been worked out so well to teach other
Mhm.
classes, I mean, that's where it's at. You know that.
Totally. Yeah, because he does not cost what Bob Yap costs. Love Bob, but Bob's expensive.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so tell me or tell us what are maybe if you don't have to say like the best part of your job, but like what are some of the best parts of your job?
Mm. It's evolved. Now the best part of my job is helping people create projects that they are connected and proud of. Um, I'm not gonna lie, it used to be what I wanted to do, but it's not that anymore. Now it's like, what is my team interested in, and what do they want to bring to life, and how do we get to yes? And that's the most exciting thing to me. Um, the other most exciting thing to me, and this is relatively new, so we were working with the Foundation for Social Good through a Gates Foundation grant to help people feel like they have a voice in our community. And what that is transitioning to is that next year I will be doing a kind of a cohort to train community members on how to make change. Um, so things like, how do you read the city budget? Like how do you do that? So we're going to bring in the city finance people to teach a workshop, like an evening on how to read the city budget. And then we've already identified some sort of low hanging fruit of things that they would like to change. And so we're going to help them walk through the process on how you actually change something in the city. So one of the things that they're interested in, which is not preservation based, but this gives you an idea because it could be, it actually will transition to something. But the first thing that we kind of thought of, the group, was in our community to have a garage sale, you have to buy a $50 permit. And I know, and so the person who actually would need to have the garage sale might be someone who actually needed $50. Like they can't actually afford to pay the permit of $50. And I'm sure that this all came up because someone was having a fleece, like a market in their garage every weekend and someone complained. Because that's how most ordinance come to be, is like one person does something not great and then they make a whole ordinance about it, right? So these folks, these are the people that we brought were people who are wage earners who don't feel connected to the city, don't feel engaged or empowered. That's kind of what this one group that we brought together. And so they were like, well, how do you change that? So we were thinking, oh, well, we'll just teach you. We're going to just teach you how to change that. And what this transitions to is sidewalks. So the number one thing in Eureka Springs that needs to be addressed is sidewalks. Everyone talks about it. I've run massive programs about it. I walked every Wednesday for a year with a different civic leader through our downtown to talk about sidewalks. Not really. We talked about a lot of things, but sidewalks always came up because when you're walking on them, you cannot not talk about them. I ran a community survey and got a response of over 200 surveys, paper surveys of people's observations of the sidewalks near them. And it is the number one thing that needs to be changed. And my hope is to train folks to make that change within our city council because they haven't moved. They're not moving forward. They're not making change. But if we can train enough citizens to have a voice, they will be compelled to make that change. You you don't have to tell anyone that we're doing that. That's what we're going to be doing. And we're going to start small, but
Hopefully none of them will watch this webinar.
it's fine if they do. They know what we're working on. I just feel like you can't ignore problems. You eventually have to address them. And no one is asking for anything to be done overnight, but there are ordinances that need to be changed. There's mindset that needs to be changed. And we need an incremental plan. There has to become an incremental plan to address the sidewalk issue. For those that don't know, in Eureka Springs, the sidewalks are supposed to be maintained by the property owner. They wrote that ordinance about 12 years ago. And that's a nightmare because a property owner should not be responsible for a public thoroughfare. And so there's a larger issues at stake here. And what we're looking at is places like Denver rewrote their ordinance because that they had similarly to what we had, and was a vote. They did a public vote, and the public said, "No, actually, we want the city to take care of it," which is also what we want. We want the city to take care of it. I mean, you wouldn't ask you wouldn't ask a private property owner to take care of the street. And so we need to be thinking of sidewalks the same way we think of the street. So, yes, so we're going to create a little army of change makers. That's what we're going to do.
Well, that's great. Somehow I'm not
That's a
surprised.
fun, it's a fun part of my job. Yeah, yeah, empowering other people to make their ideas happen is that's exciting to me, you know, more exciting than anything I could ever dream up, honestly. I might have a lot of training, I might have a lot of you know, uh data and stories and experts that I can tap into. But when it comes from actual people who want to make that change, and then I'm just behind them, kind of helping, is the best. It's just the best. It feels great. It feels great. So yeah, it's the next stage of my career. I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jackie. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, this is a great program. Thank you. I look forward
Mm.
to seeing the Young Preservationists program whenever that rolls out. And
Oh, you will, because we will not stop talking about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's really exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Are
Thank you
you
for all
young
the great.
enough for the book it? Are you young enough for the
Oh,
people?
yes. Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
so you know.
Person and
Mhm,
pizza.
mhm.
Yeah.
That's exactly how we're doing it. Yeah, yeah. Do this project, get you this thing. Do this project, get you this thing. The same concept.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
I need
yeah.
to do it. We need this.
Oh,
It's really fun for adults too.
yeah. Yeah, maybe I should. Oh, I need to talk to Sarah about that. Oh, she'd be all about that. Yeah, yeah, for
Hmm.
sure. For sure.
Well, very
All
good.
right.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you in February. Bye-bye.